Okay, I'm going to call this special committee of the whole meeting to order. Eddie, I'm sorry, it's Thursday, November 21st at 10:09. Eddie, would you call the roll?
Maddox. Here. Posh. Russell. Kuda.
Here.
Cobb.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Petrus.
All right, so Posh is out of town. Petrus is also out of town. And Vice President Russell will be joining us shortly. So we're here on day 3 to do budget hearings. Today we have Parks and Rec, Public Works, and Planning and Economic Development. Are we going to try, Addie, to get the courts in here? The Costello? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll do those 3. And then if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to, at the end of the meeting, just add, this, I guess I'll make a motion to do this. I'd like to wrap up the meeting with next steps. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We did just, I just want to make this clear that we did just receive these materials, so we're going to just be listening, and obviously if we come up with any questions on the fly. But the agreement we have with the mayor is, because we're just receiving these materials, that all the directors can come to the meetings that we have in December, so that when we have an opportunity to digest the material, you know, we may have additional questions. So I just upfront have that understanding. So we have Director Gonzalez with us, who's been, are you in your 3rd week here?
This is my 4th week.
4th week, wow.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
You're a wily veteran already. And Tara Schuster, our Director of Finance. So Director Gonzalez, I think we'll just turn it over to you. You can make opening remarks. We'll go to Tara Schuster for the some of the numbers, and then I'll turn it over to council.
Yeah, sure. So thank you guys for having me once again. One thing that I just want to say, obviously, I'm just 3.5 weeks in, so I'm working through a lot of different situations. Obviously, I haven't been here for the majority of 2024, so there may be quite a bit of answers that I can't answer for you guys and whatnot. So I may defer things over to our finance director, or if you guys don't mind as well too, there may be some things that our assistant director, Tom Fidanza's in the back, that he can also answer as well too. So hopefully that's okay with you guys, with me just being kind of brand new and whatnot. How I kind of envision this, what basically is just to kind of highlight, I've broken this down just to kind of try to make things as efficient and as easy as possible. So if it's okay with you guys, I would like to hit on individual topics at one at a time. I have it broken down by senior center, community center, parks, public properties, and then Kane Park, okay? So that way we can just address each individual issue. And some of those may overlap to one another, obviously, but I think it's just kind of easier if we kind of focus on each one of those things individually and then move on to the next one, so we're not all over the place and jumping. And obviously, anytime that you guys have questions or whatnot, feel free to ask. So we'll start basically with the senior center. And how I'm gonna present it is things that we have already encumbered in the senior center, and then things that we're asking for in the 2025 budget for all of our topics, including capital for each one of those things. And we'll go from there, okay? So we'll start with the senior center. Basically, the big things I want to talk about is we currently have all of our position fills regarding drivers. Right now we have 3 drivers, and all of those 3, we just recently filled the 3rd position, so we are filled finally with drivers. And just to let you guys know, there is quite a few open positions throughout Parks and Recreation that I've made it a priority in my first 3.5 weeks to try to get these positions filled because it's important to our department as well too, okay? So in the senior center, we have 3 drivers. So we are maxed out at that position. We feel that 3 drivers is adequate for what we need to do right now. So we're in a good spot there. We have 2 senior vans currently. Those are older ones, but we do have, from my understanding, we do have money in the 2024 budget to purchase a 3rd van. So we are going to move forward with that. Why it hasn't been purchased yet, I can't answer, but we are going to move forward with purchasing the third van that has been encumbered for, or there's money in the 2024 budget to purchase that. So that is on my priority list to do, okay? We currently went through interview processes to fill the senior center supervisor position because as most of you are aware, we lost our senior center supervisor right before I started. So we've been just scrambling. Andrea Heim has done a fantastic job of coming over from City Hall to fill in the gaps for us. So, but we did interviews and we feel confident that we found a person. We are going to be offering that position either today or tomorrow, and with the goals of that person starting on December 9th. So that position is filled. Then there was a position where I'm not sure of the exact title, but something along a community specialist. It was like a counselor position. The person that was in that position, the person unfortunately passed away. And that position still hasn't been filled. So that's on my priority list. Once we get a supervisor in, because I wanted that person to be part of that process of hiring and whatnot. It's important because those 2 people are going to be working side by side. We're going to be filling that position as well too. And that position is already in the books for 2024. And then also, lastly, regarding the senior center, we currently have an administrative assistant position on the books for community center wise. So what I'm going to be working with both finance and also the HR is basically to fill that administrative assistant position, but that's going to be a person that's going to be a dual role both in the Office of Aging and also the community center. So I'm a firm believer on cross-training, getting the best bang for our buck. So I think between the senior center supervisor, the unfilled community specialist, and then the swing position of the administrative assistant, they will be fully staffed and we should be good to go there. Like I said, we have the 3 drivers as well too. As far as capital for the senior center, I truly think that we're pretty good over there, except for the one thing that we are proposing is $65,000 in capital for senior center. That is going to upgrade some of the lighting in the activity center over there. It is pretty bad if you guys been there. So that's going to replace some of the lighting fixtures and ballasts that are in that facility over there. And if there is money left over in that, we would like to take it into the south atrium as well too, because the lighting is kind of bad over there as well too. Not that much of a priority, but that's our goal. So $65,000 for senior center capital. That's what we're proposing. I think on your guys' list, it says community center lighting, and it's proposed at $210,000. Is it this one here, the 210? But we're knocking that way down to 65,000 just to get the senior center activity, the activity center completed. Okay. Any questions on senior center?
I'm really disappointed to hear that the new van wasn't ordered because for your information, Director Gonzalez, and please, with all due respect and welcome.
Thank you.
I have people who have approached me to tell me that they can no longer get out to Hillcrest, to doctor appointments, to a location on Bainbridge or Brainerd for doctor appointments. And having 3 drivers and 3 vans would be perhaps a way for you to look in the future at at giving them back what they had, because they used to be able to get that far. The other question I would like you to consider is there's a group called the Senior Transportation Connection, and they operate through Cuyahoga County. I can give you the contact information there, and apparently there's some cost involved, but I'd really like to see us get people up the ability to move around as they need to, not being limited because we don't have the staff or the equipment or whatever it is. And then I'd also like to ask you, how is the wheelchair accessibility, that operation, that there's one van with wheelchair lift, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard that it doesn't always work.
Okay.
So if you could check into,
We absolutely will look into that because it's a prior, like I said, I can't speak to the past and why things haven't been done.
understand.
But I can only look forward and move to the forward, and I appreciate you expressing your concerns, but I would definitely, like I said, it is a priority of mine to get this van ordered and moving forward, because I know it has been difficult for these guys over at the community center because they've been without direction regarding a director since July, you know what I mean? So it is a priority of mine to get some of these things taken care of.
thank you very much.
Yeah, and if you have any information, please feel free to email it over to me so that I have contact information, because the person that we're bringing in for senior services, she has a ton of experience in this field. So she has a lot of good ideas that we want to present to her and all that good stuff. So, okay.
Thank you.
So
Yeah. You're welcome.
at the senior center,
Mhm.
well, actually, this is, I guess, would be more about the community center. Budget, maintenance budget, is that part of this?
So the people that maintain our community center are the same people that maintain the senior center. There isn't like a set staff, dedicated budget or staff to do that. So it's the same maintenance staff that takes care of our community center. So yeah, it's all built in to the budget for community center, which they also maintain the senior center as well.
And how much money is dedicated for the maintenance of the building?
As far as a dollar figure, I'm not sure. I know we do have, well, if we can talk about that under the community center side, if you don't mind.
No, I don't.
Because I think it goes hand in hand with some of the positions that we have and all that good stuff that we're kind of looking for. Okay. Any other questions regarding senior center wise? Okay. Community center, jump over to the community center side of things. We feel pretty confident with the budget that was presented in here that Director Schuster had created. A couple things that we're proposing as far as community center side. We are proposing two new positions over at the community center. I've spent the first 3.5 weeks really evaluating some things and what's working, what's not working. And the mayor made it a priority saying, what do you think is gonna help you become successful? So the first position that we're looking to create, a brand new position, is called the recreation specialist, or something along those lines. I try to be as creative as possible with this position title, but basically what we have over at the community center is we have great employees at what they do. The problem though is that they're great at what they do. They specialize in what they do. So there hasn't been much intertwining or cross training when they've built job descriptions in the past and whatnot. So like I said, similar to the administrative assistant position, I'm a firm believer on doing a lot of cross training and plug and play positions. So with this recreation specialist position, it'll create a new job that can be able to be cross-trained in many different positions throughout the facility. Perfect example is we have our front desk administrator. She's going on vacation here soon, and she's going to be gone for a couple weeks because she's having a grandchild. Her daughter's having a baby, so she wants to be there. No problem. but some of the administrative duties that she takes care of, people are kind of looking at like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that and whatnot. So with some of the existing staff, we can help some of those things, but I'm looking for a dedicated person that will be cross-trained in all departments, all areas, so that way if we have a person go on vacation, we have a person that's out on leave or whatever it may be, or it may be a department that just needs a little bit more help. This person can do that. And in addition to that, this person is going to be mainly responsible for all of our purchase orders, payroll, different things like that, because it was previously on our assistant commissioner. We lost our assistant commissioner, Chris Kendall, but we gained another one. But when we gained the other one, that Jonathan Wilhelm, he took on the responsibilities of a lot of other things because we have a lot of projects going on in the community and different things like that. So I want him to be able to truly focus on those things, and this new person would be taking on the responsibilities of purchase orders, of payroll, doing the monies in the morning when our front desk attendant isn't there, helping out with special events when needed, because that's always a big necessity, is that we put on these great events, but from my understanding, we don't have the help sometimes to do it. So this person would help. So it's going to be more of like a swing player amongst our department, which is going to help us out tremendously. And for example, in the situation where we lose a senior supervisor, we had to bring somebody over from City Hall, and she didn't even really know. She was thrown in the fire of things. This person would be trained in those capacities as well too. So like if we lose a person immediately, this person can step in, so we don't miss a beat, if that makes sense. Okay. So that would be a full-time position. And then the only other position that I'm proposing that wasn't on the list here was a youth sports coordinator, just to help out. It's a part-time position, paying, we'd like to pay them about $17 to $18 an hour. And right now we have an adult sports coordinator, but we also are looking for a youth sports coordinator, in addition to help Mike DeCenzo out with a lot of things, because we do have in 2025 some big projects coming up, like our Dennison field turf replacement that Mike is going to be spending a lot of time on and whatnot. So to get somebody in for $17 or $18 an hour to help with a lot of those day-to-day youth sports things. And then also my vision is to have this person try to reach out to more youth in the community to try to get them in, because I'm feeling like we're lacking that in the community center. We actually had a group come in yesterday of teenagers, and there was a good chunk of them that didn't even know that our community center existed. So we have to change that mold and model to try to get some of them youth in the center, participating in activities and events. And it's not always necessarily sports. It's different activities, arts, different things. So I think that this position, like I said, being just a part-time position will help us out tremendously with that. Okay.
Talking about year-round part-time?
Yeah, it'll be a year-round. It's going to be molded exactly like our adult sports coordinator position. It'll just be a youth sports coordinator.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Just real quick, I have a question from Councilmember Petrus. He said if he's remembering correctly, the emergency line or the panic button was not working for the senior center. Has that been fixed, or will it be fixed?
We're in the process of that. So right now we have I think there's a PO in place, right? We put in for a PO for doors?
Yeah, for the doors. Now, my understanding is that I'm not 100% sure. The panic buttons under Ledbetter were replaced. I'm not 100% sure if they are working, because nothing was said on those. He had them replaced. He didn't really tell anybody what was going on with it, so I can't even speak on that. That is something that we're looking into to see what company to use and if they are actually working, and if they do come to the police in case of an emergency. So
I can speak to that as well. You're absolutely right. They were absolutely replaced, but not sure if they're fully operational. Yep.
And we do have, once I get into the capital side of things too, we do have a big capital request that will address the panic bars, security, different things like that as well too, to answer that. But I think what I was trying to get at is I think that there was we have a PO in place to try to replace some hardware and whatnot of the doors that will help us in the immediate until we're able to come up with a long-term capital solution for that. Okay. As far as the community centers involved right now, we have 2 open Zamboni driver positions. These are union positions. One of them, we just hired a position so that person's going to start on December 9th. And we're still interviewing, posting for a second Zamboni driver. And just so you guys know, the Zamboni drivers also, they serve a multi-purpose where they drive the Zambonis, but they also help with the maintenance and cleanliness of the facility as well too, both on the rink side and the community side. So they're more of a multi-purpose role over there. We do have an open ice rink building foreman position. I'm not even sure if that has been posted yet or not, but if it hasn't, it's a priority of mine to post that and hopefully get that position filled as well too. That's a union position. And now these are already established positions that just haven't been filled. And then we also have some building attendant, part-time building attendant positions that are open that we're trying to fill too, that will fill in the gaps of some of, I know that we talked about the cleanliness and custodial work in the building. So some of these building attendant positions that we already have that we're looking to fill, and then also some of the Zamboni driver positions, those will help with maintenance of our facility, including custodial work and different things like that. So as far as that, we're not looking for any other additional positions except for, like I said, the recreation specialist and then also the youth sports coordinator part-time. As far as capital that goes for the recreation center or the community center, I should say, what we're proposing, and it goes in this order of priority for us. Number one for us is our building security updates, and we're asking for $750,000 for that. What that's going to do is that's going to replace our existing fire alarm system and also our security alarm system. So those are 2 separate things, fire alarm and security alarm systems. The fire alarm system is 20 plus years old, and it's running on faults that can't be fixed. And then our security alarm hasn't been operable since 2020. So those are a high priority for us. The safety and security of our building is a high priority. So basically the fire alarm, exactly that, is the fire alarm system. When you pull it on the wall, it sounds off the whole system and it communicates with the fire department to bring people out. So that's what the fire alarm is. The security system is basically what we're looking to replace the old cameras in our building. Refurbish those doors that are not working, including some of those panic bars and different things, and actually get them operating how they should be operating, connected to our security system. So if we have doors that are supposed to be for emergency exit only and people are going in and out them, they're going to alert us of those things. And just trying to get similar to City Hall here, some of our doors, getting them updated into the new times with key fobs, compared to having to rely on keys and a million people having keys. Right. If we did key fobs, we can really control who's coming in and out of our building by those key fobs and whatnot. Sometimes keys, we have old building supervisors that never turn in their keys that still have their keys to the facility, and they can come in and out whenever they want to. So that's kind of what we're looking for there.
Oh yeah, please.
Go ahead.
Well, we're speaking about security. I'm taking a leap over to the sprinkler system itself, and how it would turn itself on and when it should turn itself on. Yeah. And I understand you had a meeting with one of our citizens who showed you the different pieces that look like they need to be attended to. Do you have that in your maintenance budget?
Yes, so that we talked about that this morning. We figured that into our high priority on our general maintenance. It's not because we're not replacing, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, Director, but because we're not replacing the existing, the whole thing, it doesn't have to be a capital item. We're just going to be repairing what we already have. So that can be under general maintenance for that. But myself and Tom Fidanza, we talked about that this morning about fixing, because that was a priority of mine. I asked him, I said, what about our fire system or our sprinkler system? And he says, it doesn't need to be completely replaced. We can just fix the areas, and that'll be under general maintenance.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions regarding the building security or anything like that before I go on to the next thing? Okay. Second on our priority list for the community center, and now the costs go down substantially compared to the big figure of $750,000. We're proposing AV, and on your guys' sheet, I believe it says $20,000. But what we're actually, after reviewing everything on my end, I'm actually asking for $60,000 for AV equipment, because I'm adding, instead of just doing room number 7, I think if we're going to do it, we might as well do it right with the amount of rentals and people, and especially now I know that it's high on the mayor's list to have, a lot of community events at the community center. So with that going on, in addition to room 7, I'm including room 1AB, the senior center conference room, and then also the multi-purpose room in the senior center as well too. All of those areas being updated with AV that people can come in, plug and play, similar to what we have here, the executive conference room upstairs, different things like that. Some rooms may be getting a little bit more, like the room 7 upstairs might be getting a little bit more speaker system, different things like that. But some of those smaller rooms would get some of the things like we have in the executive conference room and whatnot, just to kind of get us caught up and up to speed on those, what's up to date.
Yeah, I just want to say that'd be great, because I can't remember what meeting it was, but last year I had, somebody asked me to help them out in room 7, and I had to lug my PA system up there. It was kind of a pain,
Yeah, I totally agree. And from what I've been hearing too, it's a hot commodity regarding rentals and different things like that. So it'll definitely help the cause. So that's why I increased it from 20 to 60, because I figured if we're going to do it, all the areas that we use for rentals and different things like that, we got the company out there. Let's just get it all done in one shot.
Yeah.
That's my goal. Okay.
Would this would this AV system allow, like if we wanted to have a council meeting or something, because I know that Steve has to bring a lot of equipment over there. When we've had meetings there, would this alleviate some of that, or?
I think it would alleviate some of it. I'm not sure if it would alleviate all of it. I mean, but because I'm not proposing cameras or different
Right.
things like that. Except for, I would think what would be important, like I said, I keep using the executive conference room upstairs, how it has like that sound bar with the camera for like Zoom meetings. But other than that, I'm not proposing like big cameras or different things like that. But as far as, audio and visual things, I think that we could, bigger TVs and or projector screens or whatever we need to do. I think that would help the cause.
Yeah, I know the audio system in the, what's the big room downstairs called?
Room 1A and 1B.
Yeah, the one where we have the multi.
Oh, in the senior center?
Yeah, that's
That's a multi-purpose room in the senior center, yeah.
that stinks.
Yeah.
That system is just, yeah.
And I haven't even explored it, I'll be honest with you, but I just know that we just need
Yeah.
an updated system and whatnot. So that would be my proposal for the building.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
I just want to say to anyone watching it, no one would guess that you just started. Just to be clear, this is absolutely unbelievable. Thank you for the thorough way that you've taken a look at everything thus far, and I really appreciate the transparency in terms of you walking through it. I just wanted to stop and say it's amazing how much you picked up in such a short amount of time, and not just in terms of being very clear about where we are, but making adjustments for where we're going, the strategic thinking that you're doing. And so really appreciate that and welcome it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. Move on. We talked about the senior center lighting, which would also trickle into the south atrium if we had money left over. We already discussed that. So that covers the actual senior or the community center itself. Moving on, any questions, any other questions regarding community center?
Well, the reason I brought up maintenance for the community center was because I remember last year when we were talking about fixing the north rink, there was only $15,000 set aside for maintenance in the community center, which seemed like not possible, that seems like, I don't know much about it, but it just didn't seem like much money to take care of it. It sounds like you have the budget you need proposed here.
Yeah,
Next year for maintenance.
I'm not sure what the 15,000 actually covered. Because we're talking about employees that are doing this, and it's a lot more than 15,000. So
It wasn't employees, it was just a budget to maintain the building, like, whatever you'd need to, not personnel,
okay,
but just,
general.
general maintenance.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do have, and on our property tax bill, the residents are contributing to a recreation improvement fund. I think it's about $500,000 a year. And I recall, and this is for Director Schuster, you weren't here, that I asked for an accounting of what we've been doing with that money over the last few years, because I think it was dedicated to making improvements to our recreational facilities.
Okay, I can definitely get that for you. I think it's Fund 216 if I'm not mistaken.
So that would be in the expense worksheet?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to hold things up. I'll look for it, but if you could look into that, I would appreciate it. And Director Gonzalez, I know you're new. I think you were at our last meeting when I mentioned the idea of our looking at what we're charging for participation in activities, the personal training, fitness, and also the rental fees for our various facilities. I don't believe we've looked at that since 2020 I don't expect it to be a profit center, but to the extent that we aren't charging what I think is an appropriate amount, not what I think, but what you think is an appropriate amount, I want to make sure that we revisit that early on in your tenure.
Okay. Yeah, we could definitely take a look at some of those things for sure.
So 216 is on page 41, or it starts on page 41. Director Gonzalez, let me ask you about the condition of the exercise equipment. What do you think?
For my initial, I think, so we just started back up with a maintenance program for them. I think that was lacking for quite a while. And I think in 2024, actually just recently, was the first time in quite a while that we established a maintenance program for them. And we will continue that moving forward. I think it's in pretty decent condition. I would need some time to really just evaluate it and see and talk to my staff and whatnot and where we're at. But I think, in my opinion, for moving into 2025, obviously we wouldn't turn down any money to if we wanted to purchase a couple pieces of equipment and whatnot. But I think what we have established is okay. for now, and until we evaluate and come up with a comprehensive plan if we need new equipment, not new equipment, and all that good stuff.
Well, I know there's not a lot of room for
Correct.
anything else,
Yeah.
any additional equipment.
Right.
But some of it, and I've worked out on it, it seems a little antiquated. And then there's not like some of the kind of standard equipment that you'd find in a regular gym.
Yeah.
Like, especially like upper body stuff. Seems a little lacking in that
Yeah.
area.
And
But that's just, one user's opinion.
And like you said, we lack the space right now.
Yeah.
So I would like to get in there and evaluate what's being used, what's not being used, what's a hot commodity, what's not. Because obviously if we're adding something, we're probably going to have to subtract something for the space purposes, unless we can get creative and moving some stuff around or whatnot. But yeah, I would like the opportunity for 2025 to kind of evaluate and all that good stuff, and then come back maybe in the 2026 budget with a proposal of new equipment, how we see fit.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
I'm looking at the clock, so I'm kind of concerned. I do have questions, but I'm going to prioritize one or two of them, if that's okay, Director
Absolutely.
Gonzalez. And for instance, on the capital request for 2025, you have a line item on here for $17 million for the pool and bathhouse replacement and restoration of Cumberland Parks Pool. We're really looking carefully at capital requests, so is that, because it's blue line, does that mean it might be a year out or 2
Yeah,
years?
so if I can clarify, this, a good chunk, almost all of this, of the capital request list that you see in front of you, was created prior to me coming on board.
Sure.
Tom Fidanza and Chris Kendall spent a lot of time sitting down together and creating this list. The purpose of this list, and I know that there's a million things on here, the purpose of this list was really more of a comprehensive 5 to 10 year plan compared to what we're requesting just for this year. That's why in my line items, I'm going through the things that we're really requesting for 2025. That's a high priority. And a lot of these things, I should add as well too, regarding a lot of our capital items. That's why some of the things that may be a priority, but I'm not asking for in 2025, is because a lot of these things should be included in our upcoming Parks and Rec master plan that we have coming forward. So a lot of those things should be included in that Parks and Rec master plan, so that we can bring the whole thing forward and we can kind of start piecing and parting our community center, parks, playgrounds, different things like that.
And are you aware that from what I understand, the Dennison Park splash pad, the pieces itself, the materials have been purchased? So you don't, the budget doesn't need to be 1 million to 1 point.
Correct.
So that we're just looking at getting that thing installed, hopefully in 2025?
Yeah, there is money to pay for the structure, the actual splash pad itself, the play features, and then the installation of that. Where there is no money, and I guess I can't give you, I don't have any guidance on this because I haven't talked to really anybody about the Dennison splash pad because I'm so brand new. From my understanding, there is no money appropriated for the plumbing that has to go to the splash pad, the electrical that has to go to the splash pad, and then also a structure that's going to house the pumps that's going to operate the splash pad. So as far as the actual splash pad itself, it was appropriated for, and the money, the remainder of the money is encumbered in the 2024 budget moving forward, but there is no, I guess prior to me, there was no plan for those additional features or those additional things that are required.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
Just about that too, absolutely. And one of the things in our discussions when we talked about even increasing this to get the splash pad done was the fact that we knew that was going to probably be the bottom, not the ceiling, that we would have to come back and discuss the other portions of that equipment. And so that
Right.
was something that was absolutely, that we knew about, that there will be an expectation that you all have to return back to us to do that portion in order to get that done.
Right. I mean, and that's when I would have to work with Tom, because like I said, there was, I believe it was somewhere in the ballpark of $500,000 out of that 1.2 that was already appropriated, but that only included the splash pad and the installation of the splash pad. That didn't include those other three proponents. And I think that that's where the additional $500,000 to $700,000 of that 1.2 is coming from. That's why it's a total of 1.2. I don't have an exact figure for you how much that other stuff would cost, like I said, but we could evaluate that and get that over to you guys.
May I ask you to update us on that, maybe in the next couple of months, because
Sure.
that community, that neighborhood, our neighborhood needs something like that because the pool was taken away. So it's really important hopefully we'll be able to see it functioning in 2025. I do have one more general question about park maintenance. It's my understanding 2 of your employees who currently do maintenance throughout the buildings in our city are retiring. So will you be replacing them?
Yeah, as people retire, we plan on replacing immediately.
And we have a lot of maintenance issues that have presented themselves. For instance, in the Barbara Boyd Park, that there's a ravine there and there's trash in that ravine. And those are the kind of things that we're looking for, that you make sure you have enough in your budget. Maintenance, just general maintenance, pruning of trees, pruning of shrubbery, to make our parks look like somebody cares.
Yeah.
So just in your head.
Yeah. If we could go, if you guys are okay with community center, I would like to move on to parks, if that's okay with you
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can
Just
kind of talk to some of that things as well.
I just wanted to, just for clarity, so that we can move forward. It's clear that maintenance is happening in our park, and if someone cares. And I know if it's the way you worded that, I just, with staff listening and our departments here, I just want to make it clear that it is clear that there's an investment in the work in the parks. Could we do better? Absolutely. There's places, but I don't want anyone to walk around here and listen to the fact that it looks like nobody cares coming through those parks when there are people working so hard. I don't know if that's how that was meant, but that's the way I heard that. And as a former public properties employee myself, I know that work is difficult, and there are people out there even now doing that work in the snow. And so I just want to make sure that they recognize that we do see that there's absolutely improvement, but it does look like there's investment in our parks and that people do care. And I definitely appreciate that staff. And like I said, as being a former public properties employee myself, I just want to make sure that they hear that. Thank
I
you.
apologize for that. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. So moving on to parks, addressing some of the issues and concerns that were just brought up by the councilwoman as well too. Right now, we only have, because of attrition and whatnot, and we only have, I think it's like 9 or 10 laborers, and that includes tradesmen, foremen, and actual laborers themselves that are dedicated to our park system. So there's, I believe we have 4 laborers positions that are open that we're looking to hire immediately. And then also 1 equipment operator position that we're looking to hire immediately as well too, to help with some of these issues of the park maintenance and different things like that. So those guys, with the combination of being extremely short-staffed because, obviously being down basically 5 people in that department of a department of 14 or 15. And then also the combination of property maintenance being under the umbrella of Parks and Rec as well too, which I know that the mayor in his State of the City addressed that issue, that there is a plan in place to move public properties over to the Public Works umbrella. Because what's happening right now, and I'm sure you guys are familiar, and if you're not, kind of educate you guys, is those 15 people that we have that are part of our, labor force, they're kind of being pulled between parks and then also public properties and whatnot. So hopefully with the mayor's vision and the mayor's plan, like I said, moving forward, as he stated in the State of the City, they have an ultimate plan to move the public properties under the Public Works, and that'll all be unveiled when the mayor's ready, and it's that time. But that will help also with the efficiency of maintaining the parks as well too, if that makes sense. Yep. So like I said, we have 4 laborers and 1 equipment operator positions that we're looking to fill immediately to help out with the parks system as well. The capital items, like I said, for the park system, capital items that we're requesting, and some of these are kind of intertwined with public properties as well too, because some of the equipment will be used for both parks and public properties as it sits currently. But it's fairly minimal. As you guys know, we have a lot of projects already established in 2025 for our parks and playgrounds and different things like that. And then we also have a Parks Master Plan coming into play as well too, that's going to incorporate a lot of future capital improvement projects that the city feels is going to be important. But for 2025, I'm proposing $25,000 in nature trail upgrades. So just to do some path upgrades in the woods and different things like that. We're thankful for the opportunity to work with some of these private groups, but we want ultimately the improvement of our parks and trails and different things like that to be done by our department. So I'm requesting $25,000 for path upgrades, in the woods and whatnot. And then also, if you go to the public properties capital request items, because like I said, a lot of these things are intertwined together. If you go under purchase various vehicles, that number is very high, 620. I'm proposing to reduce that down to $360,000. And what we're looking for out of that is we're looking for a new dump truck with a salt spreader that can be used for our parks, playgrounds, and then also public properties. And then 2 facilities trucks, so basically 2 F-150s that are going to be equipped with snow plows as well too. And 1 hybrid SUV that can be used mainly at our community center. We have a lot of, obviously we're not in City Hall, so we have a lot of people that go back and forth to City Hall. A lot of people that run special events outside of our community, going back and forth to parks. So this SUV, hybrid SUV that we're proposing would just be strictly, it would stay at the community center. So it's not anybody's vehicle. It's just a vehicle that the community center staff can use when they need something. Currently, we don't have anything right now for all the staff. So that would be a $360,000 line item for those items. And then also we're lacking maintenance equipment for our parks. So what we're proposing is an additional $550,000 for a Bobcat, a tractor with attachments, a stump grinder, and a baseball, softball field infield groomer, because our infield groomer is over 20 years old right now. It's on its very, very last leg. And then 1 additional trailer. So we did cut that way down from what it was, from $940,000 down to $550,000. So that's what we propose, and that would encompass both public properties and then also parks together. That equipment could be used for dual roles in that. Okay. And then, like I said, we do have the Parks Master Plan that we do and plan on including a lot of other capital projects into so that we can see what the priorities are, what's not, and we can kind of move forward from there. But that's the immediate needs of 2025 that we feel as a department for parks and then also public properties.
Okay. We're going to need, I mean, we can go another 5 minutes or so, but we got two more, pretty meaty presentations. So any other questions? I certainly want to hear them. Yes.
You do have on here the listing for the generator at Fire Station 2. And I didn't hear you describe it in your priorities, but it went out, failed on them last winter. So would you consider looking at that when you get a chance and expediting possibly?
Yeah, we could take a look at that.
Thank you.
All right, Director, as far as, I certainly heard what Councilman Maddox said about the attempts to maintain the parks, but we do get complaints, and they're, I would say, somewhat numerous about the condition. Sometimes where the signs are for the rules, it's just, it's 7 feet up in the air with like 10-point font, and it's water's leaked in there, so it looks kind of bad. There's a lot of times people use the picnic tables and they they staple the tablecloths in there, so there's like hundreds of staples sometimes in some of the picnic tables. Just these are the kind of things people complain about. I'm only saying this to you because I'm sure in your budget you can take care of stuff like this, but I don't know if you being new and all, I don't know if anybody brings up this kind of granular stuff, but it is the kind of stuff that we hear about. The installation of the audio visual equipment in Kane Park, is it your intention to get that, procure the equipment, provided that the budget's approved and so forth, and get it installed before the season starts this year? Sorry, in 2025.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal is to get it ordered and installed prior to the 2025 season coming up.
Okay, and when can we see the numbers for Kane Park, the Kane Park season? Ticket sales, revenue versus expenditures?
I would have to rely more on the general manager down there in the finance department, because obviously I wasn't here for that part of the season and whatnot, but we can try to get something.
Mayor, would Ian, is his last name Hins, would he be able to give us those numbers?
I think between the general manager and the finance department, we can get you that.
Okay. Maybe for the December 2nd meeting, somewhere between now and then. I'm just looking for anything else, I guess. Well, you know what, let me ask one more question, then you can ask that. So on page, this doesn't have page numbers on it, but it's the third page, capital requests. Kane Park new indoor theater, $3.5 million. Can you talk about that?
So even though these capital were included in this, this is not in the 2025 budget right now. Like the director was telling you, when they were assessing everything that would need to be done, a wish list of everything. If we had all the money in the world, this is what we would want to do. Just to give an idea to the director coming in of all the obstacles out there and everything that they want to do with the community center, with the parks.
Yeah.
So
how can we disaggregate the ones that are for 2025 and kind of a,
So as of right now, none of this is in. Like we said at the
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't
beginning,
know that.
of the budget hearing, is that not all the capital has been budgeted for the 2025 year. He's new, and we wanted him to come in and be able to assess everything
got it.
and then come back to council and say, these are the plans going forward. There's so many moving parts with the parks master plan being out there, that not being, shared yet, not
Okay.
available.
We just selected a group for it, so we're
Yeah.
still in the beginning phases of all that. But as far as if I could jump in as a little bit too, is like, I did, because Ian is actually on vacation right now. He's going to be gone for 2 weeks. But I did have a conversation with him prior to leaving, just very, very minimal conversation. With all of the projects that are going on at Kane Park currently, our capital budget, our capital request, I should say, is going to be very, very minimal for 2025 because we already have a ton of things going on at that park. Some of those things, like very minimal when I say like a $15,000 walk-in cooler because the walk-in cooler is broken, and then maybe like a vehicle or two, like a pickup truck that they don't have. But other than that, it's very, very, very minimal.
Right, but when you say that, you're talking about from the general fund. We know we have a lot of ARPA capital projects.
Correct.
And we also have, slipped my mind. Go ahead, Councilman Khan.
Yeah, and I know that we've run out of time for this presentation, but I would like, when you get together the information on Kane Park, I also want to explore these 2 new positions that are proposed, the manager and a PR person. Because
And those positions are actually incorrect. What they're actually proposing is an administrative assistant over there to handle a lot of, because there's just so many employees and different things. So it'll handle a lot of the payroll, purchase orders, day-to-day paperwork, all that stuff. So that it's an administrative assistant position. And then they're also proposing that second position is a stage production specialist / facility coordinator. So basically, what Ian had told me is that we're getting, $800,000 worth of new AV equipment. We need somebody full-time on staff that can set up, tear down, operate the equipment, all that good stuff. And that's a full-time position all by itself. So that's what the second position is for. That's what I talked to Ian about.
So it sounds like your hands are full with just parks and recreation, and that moving public properties over to Public Works is going to be a relief.
Well, yeah, depends. on
Not for
perspective.
Director Clinkscale, because I just saw you roll your eyes, but I don't blame you.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we're trying to build capacity in Public Works now with the hiring of that second assistant director for capital projects. And I think that'll help free up a bit of the ability to manage the additional work and the additional staffing from public properties.
So for now, this is a transitional period. It's still here
Oh, yeah.
with parks, but next year, okay.
Yeah, we're hoping that it all coalesces in 2025 and we get into the new way of doing things.
Any other questions? Because Director, we can't thank you enough, and welcome. You're right on time. And we appreciate the level of detail you dove into with us today. Sure. And I can almost assure you that after we digest this, we probably will have more questions for you at the council meetings in December, but we appreciate everything you did today.
You got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Director Clinkscale, you can come and join us. Would. And I need to get to it. Here we go. Okay, so next up is the Director of Public Works, Director Colette Clinkscale. Director, would you like to make some opening remarks, and we'll dive into the budget items?
Sure. Good morning.
Morning.
So I would like to report that in 2024, the Department of Public Works has already bid 14 capital improvement projects. We have 2 projects that are out to bid now, and we have 2 projects that we anticipate bidding in December. And that's kind of unprecedented for 1 year. A lot of it has to do with the American Rescue funds that we received. So we'll be quite busy in 2025 actually performing those projects. We also introduced some new technology into our operations. As you guys are aware, we actually purchased software. It's Rubicon that we use in our refuse and recycling department, which has greatly increased our efficiency in our refuse and recycling collection. But this year, we also introduced software from a company called Urban SDK that's helping us with our speeding analysis. It's part of our traffic calming initiative. We also introduced this fall some AI technology to actually perform some street pavement assessment in our city. And we'll be using that report to determine in 2025 what streets we're actually going to repave. And we're also gearing up to introduce a new procedure in our ice removal or ice control operations with the liquid brine. We plan to implement that in January. And the other thing that you'll see, and I believe it's in my capital budget, is we're going to be acquiring some vehicle maintenance software, which I hope will help us in controlling our inventory. We have a lot of inventory in our vehicle maintenance operation, and having some new software, I think will save money. And we won't be storing a lot of supplies that really are outdated now. You know, we have quite a few supplies. So I think we'll be able to control and get a handle on how we order our supplies in the vehicle maintenance department. So in 2024, we were successful in acquiring all of our capital needs that we requested in our budget for last year. So thank you guys for approving that. The only thing that we did not do was rehab our transfer station. So that cost will be actually shown in our 2025 budget. What happened with our transfer station is we want to make some arrangements so that we can continue our operations. And we're hoping to sign an agreement with the city of Shaker because they have their own transfer station. But their transfer station was being remodeled this year. So we were not able to move forward with that. And also, last year I requested some funding for our sewer department parking lot, and I only requested $75,000. And when we actually had the engineering analysis done on that parking lot, it's going to cost us $331,000 if we get it asphalted, and it's going to cost $534,000 if we get concrete on it. So it was substantially higher to get that parking lot done. I guess there's some infrastructure that has to be addressed as part of that repaving. We have some sewer lines and things underground that we have to address as part of that repaving. And as you guys may recall, we were doing that to kind of control the dust in the parking lot. So temporarily what we did is our staff installed some sprinkler systems to keep the dust down, and it has done the job, but eventually we're going to have to repave that parking lot. The complaints, I don't think we got any complaints on the parking lot this year after that sprinkler system was installed. For my 2025 road program budget, at this time, I'm not sure exactly what streets we're going to do. I've requested $2 million. However, I do know that we will be doing North Park from Delaware to Martin Luther King. That was a portion of North Park that we did not address last year. We will also be repaving North Park from Coventry east to Arlington as part of a sanitary sewer project that we're doing. So that street will be repaved. We'll be repaving Yellowstone from Monticello to Noble Road as part of that sewer and water replacement project that we're performing. And we will also be installing some traffic calming devices as part of that project. We'll be repaving a portion of Hampshire as part of a sanitary sewer project that we have. And we've already bid Edgerly. There's a water main project that will be done on Edgerly from Runnymede to Findlay. And that project has already been bid and awarded, but it will not be performed until next year because of the weather. That project was a dual project to do Clarendon and Edgerly. So Clarendon is in process now, but Edgerly will not be done until the spring. We received a Cleveland Water grant to install a new water main on Altamont. So we will be doing repaving on that street from South Taylor to Euclid Heights Boulevard next year. And the Department of Public Works also received a 50-50 grant from the county, which allows us a grant up to $250,000 towards the repaving of Euclid Heights Boulevard westbound from Coventry to Cedar Glen. And the estimate for that project is $750,000. So there's still a large portion that the city would be required to pay. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to move forward with that project in 2025. There are some other things that we're going to consider. With the grant monies, we can do it in 2025 or 2026. But it's an opportunity to look at some other things with the planning department as far as how we're going to move forward with repaving that part of the road. And then, as I said, the remaining roads will be determined when we receive that pavement rating report from StreetScan, the company that came in and did the assessment of all of our roads. I also like to make note here that my $2 million request does not include the Blanche Road, so the planning department will probably discuss that. That was in the 2024 budget, but I'm just making mention of it to make sure that that's taken care of. And also, since I submitted my report, I found out that I was reminded that one of the fire department parking lots need to be repaved. And that is also not part of the $2 million that I requested. I had already submitted my budget when I was reminded of that by the fire chief. So with that, I guess I'm open to questions.
Sure. Director Schuster, did you want to go over any numbers?
Okay. For the 2025 department budget request, they're requesting $19.7 million. This is a significant decrease, and that's because of the ARPA sewer. They are asking for, this is kind of like misleading. So it's really two positions, but one of the positions was budgeted, the assistant public works director, the infrastructure. We're going to try to hire it this year.
Or at least at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm.
Right. But we had to put it in because it was a newer position. But I don't know if it's a real new position because there was money in the budget for 2024. We just didn't know what we were going to call it. So now this is what they're going to want to hire. And then another administrative assistant.
I'd also like to make sure that we reactivate that foreman position in our sewer department. Okay. Because if I can just segue just for a second, there are two pieces of equipment in my capital requests. One is the brine equipment, and we actually received a grant for that, but that's something that I want to, that's something I would like to purchase now, before 2025. And also in my budget, there is a request for a Vector truck And I can purchase that now as well out of community cost share funds that I have with the sewer district. I'm required to spend at least $500,000 of those funds by the end of the year. So I want to make sure I encumber that machine, but it will not be delivered until June of next year. And it's a reimbursement.
So it's the 2020, so you don't want it for 2025, you want it for 2020.
I need to encumber it now. But the expenditure will not take place until next year.
But to encumber it, you need budget.
Right. Because I have to show them that we've made the purchase in order for them to make sure that the funding is in place.
Mr. President,
The other one was the brine equipment.
just real quick, I do have a question from, going back to streets real quick, from Councilmember Petrus. Are you guys planning on repaving the eastbound portion of Euclid Heights Boulevard too, or just the
Not in 2025.
2025? Okay, thank you.
All right, questions from council? Larson?
I have quite a few, but I'll try to prioritize in those that I don't get answered today.
That's okay, we have time.
Okay. First of all, I do want to propose, and it's not in the budget, but I would like to request that the city have a citywide with 2 locations for composting stations, as we have already over at Marks, and the efforts that the sustainability coordinators put into the plan, the climate and resilience plan, if we can get people starting to consider composting, we can reduce the tipping fees because the compost will go directly to whoever bids for that project, and we'll also reduce the methane emissions from the landfills themselves. So I would like to ask, and I'm hoping Addie will add this to her list if it's okay with council. I'm asking for $38,160, and it's based on figures that I received from one of the companies that does the composting.
So my understanding is that there's a composting right at, by the playground at Coventry
Yes.
and Euclid Heights.
Yes.
And then there's another one you said at Marks?
No, that's the one. They moved when the park started to be built. We had to move them, or Rest Belt Riders had to move them.
Oh, okay.
So it's now
I wasn't aware that it was.
it's really a city parking lot, but it's attached to
Yeah,
Marks.
okay.
Yeah, so these would be, we're paying for the citizens to be able to use these without having to pay a fee. So that's what I'm proposing,
Okay.
to try to encourage people to get into, it's a change in your lifestyle. It really is. So there'll be some education involved, and the company that I've been speaking with is willing to help us with education and information out to the citizens.
All right, go on.
Okay. Director Klingscale, on those street repaving projects that you are doing, I was encouraged to hear that you were going to be doing traffic calming on one of the streets that's a target. I'm wondering if, when you look at repaving projects, do you consider the parameters of the Complete and Green Streets in terms of what that policy suggests that we do when we do repaving projects?
Yes, we're going to be working with our planning department and our sustainability coordinator to make sure we incorporate those aspects into our plan.
Thank you so much. I can ask that later, sorry. Oh, the traffic calming. We budgeted $400,000 for 2024, and we spent that from your last report, which is great. And I'm wondering if, and I can add this as an ask for until we get all the figures on capital investment, if it would seem reasonable to add into the 2025 budget a $500,000 request for traffic calming so that we can start to see even more installations throughout the city, or is that unrealistic?
I don't know. Because traffic calming is going to be a focus for us, moving forward. But what it's going to cost us, I don't know. We spent $400,000 because we did some infrastructure work on Harcourt. That was a big chunk of it. So I guess that that would maybe be a reasonable start, because we can look at that in other areas where there is infrastructure work related to traffic calming.
So if it's okay with council, I'd like to add that $500,000 ask to the list that Addie's maintaining.
I mean, at the end of this meeting, I want to circle up about all of this, but, on the fly, I don't know that I want to commit to anything,
Okay.
right now. I mean, I'm committed to, personally committed to hearing everybody's ideas and implementing the ones that the majority of council wants to implement.
Okay,
So in
that's all I had.
theory, yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Cobb?
No question.
All right, so, Director, I'm going to, Councilman Maddox? Director, I'm going to ask you some kind of general questions, and then I'm going to get a little more granular. So, has the $18 million in ARPA funds that went for sewer repairs, that's all been encumbered, correct?
No, it has not all been encumbered. We have 2 projects that are out to bid now. And with those 2 projects that we have in the engineering, construction, and admin that will go along with those last 2 projects, then that $18 million will be encumbered.
And you suspect, you're obviously confident that by the end of the year that will happen. Okay. And in your many projects that you've handled very, very, very well, have you uncovered anything that's unexpected and perhaps alarming or urgent that we didn't know about that we might have to use general funds for because it goes beyond what we have for ARPA funds dedicated to sewer repair? I don't think I asked that very well, but do you know what I mean? I'm just saying, in all these projects that you've overseen, with the money that has been encumbered, have you uncovered anything that you think the EPA or just, maybe complaints from, water backing up into homes, that's, anything unexpected that we're going to have to tend to?
Well, the any type of sewer work comes out of the sewer fund. The sewer fund is an enterprise fund, so currently it's not coming out of the general fund.
Okay.
And yes, we encounter stuff all the time. When you're working underground, we're running into things that we did not know about, that we have to do change orders or amend the plans, because the plans that we may have, it may be something different when we actually open the street up. So we do encounter that from time to time.
And this would all be money we pay in taxes, so to speak, to the Northeastern Ohio Sewer District?
No. That's right now, going forward, it would be from monies collected through our local sewer rates.
Sewer rates, okay.
Right, and if you guys recall, and it's going to be coming before you again, at the end of last year, we were kind of in the middle of a sewer rate analysis with Black and Veatch. And we're going to, of course, be re-engaging them, because now that ARPA funding is going away, we have to plan for any type of infrastructure work that has to be done in the future. And we were in the process of doing that before we received the ARPA funds. So we were in a good position where we did not have to pass on a lot of work that's doing now through our rates. So we were able kind of to delay that period of rate increase, because it's done like every 5 years. Mm-hmm. However, now the city's going to have to determine how we're going to fund all these projects that are part of our consent decree. And that's going to come through user rates. And will determine what those rate increases, what the recommended rate increases will be once we complete that rate analysis.
Okay, I'm glad you cleared that up. So there's nothing in the general fund budget that needs to be addressed with it. Okay,
currently.
and we don't, then we can move on. It was my understanding, and I let the record show Vice President Russell is here, that last year we funded 2 leaf vac trucks. That's
No.
not your,
No,
1,
we only
okay,
did one.
okay. Okay, then, and just for the record, we did get that leaf vac truck and it is out swooping up leaves.
Mr. President, I have a question from Councilmember Petrus.
You know what, I'm gonna finish this. Yellowstone, traffic calming. Did you say traffic calming was going to
We're
happen?
going to do something over there.
Okay.
Part of that project, because that's near the middle school.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. Since the police use Yellowstone for heading to emergencies and so forth to get to the north side of town, would any kind of traffic calming on there, because sometimes, and I've witnessed this myself, them speeding down Yellowstone because they have to. Would any kind of traffic calming structures interfere with the police, responding to an emergency?
I guess I would, I wasn't aware of that, that they use that as a route.
Big time.
Number one. And number two, they do have like some traffic calming devices that make it easier for emergency vehicles to get around. So I guess at that time, we'll take a look at what those devices are.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Go ahead with
I'm just going to read what he sent to me. He says, I'm concerned that many roads like Lee Road remain unsafe. Increasing pedestrian and cyclist safety is his highest concern. The city of Cleveland completed the installation of 100 speed tables. What can council do to accelerate the installation of traffic calming equipment like speed tables?
Well, I have to be honest, I'm just not prepared to answer that. But, anybody else can take a. Can you repeat that for Councilwoman Larson?
I am concerned that many roads like Lee Road remain unsafe. Increasing pedestrian and cyclist safety is my highest concern. The city of Cleveland completed the installation of 100 speed tables. What can council do to accelerate the installation of traffic calming equipment like speed tables? Excuse me.
I think so. Posh deals with that, right, and safety.
Safety and health, yeah, but we have to fund it.
Yeah, right. So, again, in the wrap up, we need to, I'm glad you read that, because when we wrap up, we have to talk about how we just got a ton of information and, what are we going to do with all this and, and kind of organize that. Vice President Russell?
Yes, I just have a question. I'm not sure if it should go to you since I just got in. I received quite a few phone calls yesterday regarding traffic calming in the Caledonia area. They said it was reported that 14 or 13 deaths had occurred in that area. And people were asking me, is there any data or where did that number come from, that they were not aware of that? And I could not answer that question, but I don't know if that should be directed to you or not.
I can't answer that question either.
Okay,
I'm not aware of that.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
So my understanding is that statement is not entirely accurate. There have been accidents. I think we're looking at the intersection of Caledonia and, let's see, let me pull it up.
Oh, where the church is.
Yeah.
Dresden, I'm not going to come up with all of them, but, there's 3 or 4 streets that kind of.
It's Winsford, Dresden, and Caledonia. And I think this is probably top of mind right now because of the recent installation of a traffic circle at that intersection. That's a really large intersection. It's got some relatively long pedestrian crossings. And there was a plan that we dropped some lit. We, had some opportunity for people to reach out about this idea to create a traffic circle in that intersection. And recently, what was it, yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday, we installed that traffic circle in an attempt to change the traffic pattern a little bit and help people slow down a little bit. Traffic circles can take a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, generally people find that it is a very convenient way to eventually get to a point where you're eliminating the stop and go and the uncertainty that comes from that with driving. And so we've installed that traffic circle right now. The stop signs are still there, but we're going to allow people to get used to driving in the way that the traffic circle requires. And then we're going to take a look at whether or not it's feasible to replace those stop signs with yield signs. We're a little cautious because there's an elementary school right down the street, and we want to be sensitive to that. And so we don't want to make too many changes all at once. But I think there, at least within the past 20 years, has been a fatal automobile collision there. And I don't know the specifics of that, but there have been multiple accidents at that intersection over the years. 14 deaths, no. I certainly don't have any data that would support that particular claim, but I believe at some point within the past 2 decades, there's been a fatal collision there. And it's right near an elementary school, so we wanted to see what we could do to institute some traffic calming. And so we've installed that this week, and we're looking forward to the data on how people respond to that change. And right now, just for everybody's information here, the installation that we did is sort of a semi-permanent installation. It is bolted in surround with sort of rocks in the middle and signage to alert people to the change. And I wanted to get this done now. We don't know how much snow we're going to get, but with this semi-permanent, with this temporary installation, it also allows a bit of training and education for our emergency services and our plow drivers to get a better handle on how to navigate these sorts of changes in our road structures. So that may be what you're hearing of. I believe
I guess it was reported on the news, and they asked about 14 deaths. I guess it was said it was 14 deaths. And people were asking, did I know about 14 deaths in the area? And I said, I was not aware of it. The only thing I could do is ask.
The reason why you were not aware of it is because there have not been, at least in recent history, 14 deaths due to automobile collisions in that.
So that was a misstated. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I just wanted the public to know, we're passing my phone. I just let the public know that the city did just post some great pictures of the staff down there and what that roundabout looks like on social media as well. So thank them for that. It looks great.
Yeah, and that is almost the same circle that they had in East Cleveland, right there at Eddy Road and what's that? Eddy Road, Phillips, and Roselle. They used to have they had one there, but they actually removed it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm aware of what that is. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Clinkscale?
I'd like to add on the traffic calming question that was posed, and something for you guys to consider as you deliberate my budget, is that we are going to be looking into the method that the city of Cleveland does to install traffic tables with asphalt. And that may require, or will require, some more funding in one of my line items. But right now, it has not been determined, but I am going to be looking into that.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Page or line item you're looking? And I apologize because I'm just catching in.
Well, if you guys created a line item for traffic calming, it would come out of that line item.
Okay.
But out of everyday operations, it would come out of my, my street division budget.
Okay.
Which I take it is spoken for.
101-6208, but what was that comment?
Well, I mean, just, you already got a lot of,
Oh, yeah, I already got everything else coming out of there.
that's, yeah.
Just a quick question, just popped in my head. I don't think we could utilize this, but just curious. The installation that City of Cleveland did at Lee and Harvard with the checkered asphalt there, is that something that we could possibly use for anything? I know they did it to stop a lot of the cars running through and doing the wheelies there, but I was just curious. I'd never seen it before, so I was just curious if that was something. If not, just wondering.
I have to look to see what that is. I know that where we have the speed tables that we're actually bolting down, they're like doing a method where they're using asphalt to do it instead of devices to do it, so.
Yep, and
I'm
creating
not
that
familiar with
hump
that Lee
there,
and
the
Harvard.
checkerboard pattern, they're just literally, there's perfect squares, but they've gouged out a piece of the pavement so that it's unlevel there. Makes it real hard if you're gonna do a spin out or something there. But I didn't know if it was
Going on
slowed
the
down.
freeway.
Yeah, yep, those rumble strips feels the same way.
Or
Yep.
rumble strips, that's something the mayor has talked about in the past, getting rumble strips in areas.
Director, I just want to say that, again, a very impressive list of accomplishments for 2024. And I see you have your hands full, as usual, for next year, and maybe even fuller if you get that switch over responsibility to the public properties. And just want to make sure you know how much we appreciate you.
Thank you.
This is a question in terms of a report card for us, the public. Have we gotten any better in terms of our recycling, our trash pickup? Are you noticing? That's something I really wanted to bring up to make
Yes,
sure.
we have gotten better with our recycling. Our recycling is cleaner. More folks are recycling, you know, and the Rubicon software that we use as part of our recycling, we also reach out to folks that are not recycling correctly. For you guys that may not be aware of how that works is not only our recycling drivers, but also our refuse drivers. With that software, they have an iPad in their truck. So it increases our efficiency because we don't have to go back when someone says, oh, you guys can pick up my trash, or why wasn't my recycling picked up? So when they arrive at the property, if the trash can is not out, the card isn't out, they can take a photo of it and it shows what time we were there. So if that resident calls and says, my trash wasn't picked up, it was out on time, we can go to that software and we can say, we were there at 8:06 and your cart wasn't out. But we also use it for recycling because if the recycling driver goes by and it's obvious or evident that there's garbage in the recycling cart or there's plastic in the recycling cart, they can take a photo of that. And when they call and say, my recycling wasn't picked up, we can tell them why it wasn't picked up. And my public response person in my department has taken the initiative to even be proactive with that. And when she goes through, when she has some downtime, she'll go through, and if she sees it, we try to track down the owner. If it's landlord, if it's not owner occupied, she'll reach out to the landlord and say, the renters are not recycling correctly. There was plastic in the recycling cart. This is the second or third week that we've seen it. Can you speak with your tenant? Because we will not pick up that cart. We won't collect. And, you know, our recycling calendar that we published this year has been helpful with letting folks know the correct way to recycling. So I would say as a community, we are definitely doing better with recycling. We're doing a good job.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'll let my kids know.
Tangentially related to this, I'm just wondering if you found that the Mayor's Action Center, as it relates to your department in particular, has created any staffing challenges or response challenges for your department because I would assume last year was the first year you started getting information, some information that way. Is that working out, that not the relationship, but the funneling of the information to your department and your,
Yes,
and your
it is.
ability and your capacity to respond?
Well, sometimes it's a challenge to respond because, you know, some of our work is seasonal, and when we're collecting loose leaves, it's difficult to do a pothole sometime right when we get that complaint.
Right.
But it has been efficient for us to track things. The Mayor's Action Center works very closely with my public response assistant. I mean, they talk every day, every morning, and they go over things that come up and redirect inquiries that may not be for the Public Works Department, because we get a lot of stuff for parks, and we'll redirect it to the Parks
Right.
Department. We get a lot of stuff for housing, and we'll redirect it to the Housing Department. And as I said, Todd works very closely with Sheena and also our dispatcher, you know, just to try to keep, you know, get a handle and try to be as efficient as we can with it.
Well, I mean, I would like to think that by now, Todd Walburn would be able to send the complaints the right way. I mean, you're saying some of the ones you get are really not for your department.
Well, it's not that Todd isn't doing it. The complaint comes in from a resident.
You're talking about electronic complaints?
Yeah.
Okay,
through the
got it.
Click
Yeah.
Fix. So it's not like coming
Yeah, I was
directly
more-
from Todd.
Yeah, I
It's
was more
coming from
talking
the
about that.
resident,
Oh,
and the resident may send it to
No, they
the
don't know.
Public
Yeah,
Works Department. They don't know. They just know that the
yeah.
grass isn't cut. You know what I mean? So
So-
not specifically not specifically from Todd, but Todd and Sheena and Howie, they'll work together to make sure that those complaints get to where they need to be.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up one of your 2025 goals, which is pothole complaints. And I see here you want to get them filled as soon as possible, but at the very least, get a orange cone in there.
Right.
So within 24 hours. So I know what the next complaint is going to be, and it's going to be, if the orange cone is there too long. So what is your, your hopeful standard operating procedure for, like, if you couldn't get to a pothole in 24 hours, which is completely understandable, how long do you think it would take after the cone was placed in general, or is it impossible to say? Do you have a goal for, like, addressing those pothole needs, so as far as time goes?
As far as time goes, I would hope to address that pothole within 5 days.
Okay.
Address it immediately so it's not a liability.
Right.
But of course, we order asphalt in bulk. We don't have like bags of asphalt when we can actually go there and do it. We may put cold patch because now asphalt plants are closing, so we have to use cold patch
Yeah.
to actually put in the pothole. And now, with the weather changing, and we have more potholes in the winter, because, the expanding of the pavement with weather changes. And so we'll put in cold patch today, and 2 weeks from now, if it warms up, it could pop out. But that's a focus, and I even have on my capital, one of my capital requests is to get a new hot box, and that's related to my pothole operation.
What number is that? You got 27 of them, so
That is,
let's see, hot box. All right, maybe I'm missing it. Oh, yeah, 16.
it's I don't know.
Oh, no, that's for the hot box truck.
It's like halfway down the page from what I requested, and the page that, it says hot box truck, $81,000.
Yeah.
It says for refuse, but it's actually for my street department.
Yeah, I'm on.
416-6203-3004.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Yes. Is there any thought of maybe somewhere in 2025 or maybe 2026 looking at a possible another leaf truck?
Back.
Thank you.
Perhaps in 2026, yeah.
2026. And
We want to, continue using it,
yeah, see how it works.
What do you think so far? You know,
So far, I'm impressed with it so far.
But as she
I
told
just have
us,
so many other needs right now that supersede me getting another leaf back,
Yeah.
given all the things that I need right now. And I just want to give it a little more time. We've only had it out there for about 3 weeks now.
yeah, I see it a lot,
we'll
actually.
see.
I mean, just
We'll see
coincidentally.
how it goes. The operator likes it, and
How much was it?
$298,000.
Yeah.
and from your visit with the municipal service meeting, had you thought about maybe, or could you incorporate in your budget? I know you talked about possibly being able to inform the residents more about how to recycle, and maybe a workshop or a day where people can come in maybe to the community center and they learn how to actually recycle their garbage or anything like that or something?
Yes, that's something that we can definitely plan to do in the spring through our relationship with the Cuyahoga Solid Waste District.
Okay.
They have folks that do education, activities, and they go into schools. And I did actually speak with Susan after that meeting. We're going to revisit it in the spring.
Okay.
The possibility of, getting to the school. She has to talk to folks in her community.
Okay.
And I'm sure it'll be easy to arrange on our end. Karen, who was on the task force,
Yes.
is actually an employee there now.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I know some of that came up at the meeting, and so I just wanted to reiterate if that's a possibility of moving forward in the future. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Looking at the financial statements from September 30th, there's an account on there. It's account number 415, and it's called Severance Ring Road Reconstruction. And there was money that we budgeted. Haven't seen it, like 35,000 plus we budgeted. Are you anticipating being able to do some repairs on that in 25 or?
I'll have to look into that and follow up.
That's perfectly fine, thanks.
Director, many thanks as always.
Yeah.
Appreciate.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, sorry, there's always another thing.
So, how have we been doing on overtime? This is a question I forgot to ask everyone else that's come through. How are we generally doing on overtime?
You ask my employees, I'm like a Scrooge with the overtime. I really control overtime, but overtime is just part of our job. I mean, it's very difficult to control. Right now with loose leaf collection, there's no way that we'll be able to get through the city twice without working every Saturday, until winter comes. And when it snows, we have to come out. When it's a storm, we have to come out. So it's just part of our job.
And the leaves
Some
seem to be
overtime.
late. They're still up, they're not falling,
Yeah, we still have, we've had a lot of leaves up until this point,
Yeah,
and
but-
there's still a lot of leaves to come down.
Yeah, I mean, it's, because I think it's been kind of a warm fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway.
If I could just
Oh, yeah,
follow up for the director and also the mayor, I'm assuming that we are watching overtime.
Oh, yes.
In our police
Yes, for
department and
sure.
our fire department. I understand
Well,
there's going to be some, but we have some safeguards in place on that.
So when it comes to overtime, just for some background, it's always a bit of a delicate balance. We know that overtime is not just intended to be sort of a reward for working beyond a certain number of hours in a given time frame, but it's also intended to be a disincentive to overworking employees on the management side. We have to make a calculation between what the cost of additional staffing that would address some overtime needs. Even with appropriate staffing, though, you can't always predict, people get sick and need to be backfilled. And sometimes the need to do that is with overtime. But you'll see when it comes to fire, for instance, we're adding additional staff. We've added additional staff to our request for 2025. And part of the reason for that is to minimize the amount of overtime, which has the dual impact of minimizing the overtime expense, but also reducing a bit of the burden on the staff that we have, because overtime means that you are working more than we generally think is appropriate for people to work in a given time frame. And so we have to balance that, though, because sometimes the cost of additional staff that would address the overtime is more of a cost than the overtime itself. And so that's something that we look at on a sort of a case by case, but we are trying to acknowledge that overtime expense, it needs to be controlled, it needs to be authorized, it needs to be maintained at a level that we can afford. And having sufficient staffing is the way that we minimize that to the degree that we can. And you're seeing it in fire. We're attempting to get back to full staff, and we've been attempting to get back to full staff in police as well. I know Director Clinkscale is very diligent about maintaining appropriate boundaries on overtime. And we may find with the addition of the parks and the public properties that we do need to take a look at staffing in public works as well to make sure that we're appropriately staffed in order to minimize overtime costs to the bare necessity.
Also, we do some creative things in public works in that we have the ability to temporarily assign our employees. So in the wintertime, we actually assign half of our street employees to an evening shift where they work 11 to 7. That reduces overtime for snow removal, snow and ice removal. And also, if we have like special jobs that come up that we have to perform in the evening or during the night because of traffic, we may reassign a whole crew to a 3 to 11 or 11 to 7 shift instead of having them coming in on overtime. And their union contract allows me to do that.
There is one additional complicated, like there are certain things that we can't control. Weather, we don't control the weather. And so if there is some extended period of snowfall and we need to maintain, shifts clearing the streets 24/7, we're going to run into overtime costs right there. If there's a major storm and we've got people out clearing tree trunks and branches and those sorts of things, we're going to run into overtime because of that sort of unexpected, emergency incident. There are other situations that sometimes from the administration's perspective, we don't control as well, but there are, sometimes special events that a community group or a business district wants to have, and that is over and above sort of the regular operational work that the departments do, and sometimes we run into overtime expense there. And it's really just a question of, when we take a look at those expenses and we take a look at what we're getting for it, we have to recognize that, it has to be worth it. But we do try to minimize it. It's not something that we're, gleeful about providing overtime. So, but we know that the work has to get done. But the staffing levels are what help us minimize overtime.
And lastly, I know I only got like 1 minute before I leave. I know Councilor Cobb brought up about fees with the Recreation Department. We'd like to look at some of the fees in our sewer department that we charge for sewer cleaning and sewer televising also.
It's a bargain.
What's that? Yeah, it's like $100 to,
$100 to come out and clean.
yeah.
It costs us more than $100 to come out and do that.
I happen to like that fee, but I appreciate that.
Please come
Thank
to
you.
us with a recommendation on that.
Yeah, make sure we know ahead of time so we can call them up. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Yep.
Mr. President, I don't know if you want to take like a 5-minute break.
You know what, unless everybody else is, where are we at on break? Yeah, I know we got a big enchilada coming up here. I don't know if that's ever been your nickname, but this is, I mean, planning covers so much, many things. So let's welcome Director Zanft from Planning and Development. Director, would you like to make maybe an opening statement and then we'll look at some numbers?
Absolutely. So I wanted to, again, thank you, like the other directors, for giving us this opportunity. We're trying to bring key staff members here to be able to answer your questions. But this is always a great time to look back at what we've done and the things that we're hoping to look forward. I wanted to take a second to be at the 10,000 foot level and talk about what our 3 priorities are as a department. And when I say department, it's sort of that super department of planning, inspections, and code enforcement or building. So of course, number 1 is providing top-notch customer service to residents, property owners, business owners, contractors, and developers. And so we're going to show you how that is woven into everything that we've done over the past year and hope to do in 25. Improve our neighborhoods through code compliance, neighborhood investment, and infill housing. So those are really important things that cut across the divisions. And then retain and attract businesses to our business districts. And that can come in a lot of different forms. What's sort of interesting about this chart on the top is you can see that there's a huge investment that you all have made in us between 2022 and today. And we want to build on that investment. And that's because we had these siloed departments that were understaffed after many years. And it's amazing when you actually provide the right amount of staff of the type of work that you can do. And I'm hopeful that you're hearing from residents, I know we are, that we've brought our service and our attention to a higher level, and we really want to build upon that. So I'd love to today talk about some of the things that we did in 2024, some of the things we didn't do, but we still want to do, and then also make a case for, particularly on the capital side, things that aren't in this budget, but that we think are really important for 2025. So I can continue talking through that, or I guess Tara has left the room, so maybe I'll just keep on going. But looking backwards for a second, and I know you have our sort of goals and objectives and recap of 24, so I don't want to recap the permits that we issued and things like that, but talk about some of the big initiatives that we took and where we're at. And it's actually apropos that today we were on the same day as Parks and Properties and Public Works, because a lot of what we do really is in conjunction with them. So the first thing I'll talk about is that Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. It took a while to get an RFP out on that. We were also waiting for the transitions that were happening in the Parks and Recreation Department, but we got some really, really good responses and ultimately interviewed 4 teams. And we have a recommendation to make. We have to talk with the mayor a little bit about it, then bring it forward to you. But pretty much all of the responses were higher than the $125,000 that were allocated in the 24 budget. So you'll see in our 25 request capital project is we're asking for $80,000 in addition. So that would create a budget of $205,000, which will be able to cover the selected firm or any of the ones that pretty much fell under that. And that's because we really threw a lot into that RFP, including we consulted with the city of Cleveland and their parks people to sort of get an idea of what are the types of things we should be looking at. And just to stay on this point for 1 second, I did mention to Addie the idea of presenting our recommendation to you at either a committee of the whole or a committee meeting. So we want that to happen before the end of the year and just wanted to plant that seed here today. Gateway and wayfinding plans, this is probably something that folks haven't really been paying too much attention to, but that's a project that's in full swing with our county planning commission. And the idea there was we were going to do a study of where to do these gateway and wayfinding plans. We've spoken a lot about our business districts and making sure people know how to get there, how to get to parking and things like that. Once those plans are done, then it's design and fabrication. And so there'll be a request in the 25 capital budget for that fabrication allocation. Blanche Avenue, which I think Director Clinksale alluded to in her presentation. Just as a reminder, there's a capital project which is partially federally funded to extend or build out the Blanche Avenue that's been on our maps for about over 100 years. And so our portion of that was actually in the DPW Public Works budget. We've made a lot of progress on that over this year, including working with GPD to get better idea of design. They're working on a survey. They're working on cost estimates and design. And we're really not behind because of ourselves. We're behind because of the federal government has yet to actually give an indication of when that money is going to be available, although it seems to be getting close. So that's a 2025 project, even though it's been in our 2024 budget. And we look forward to that being an area where that can bring a number of new residents and new households and new homes, tax-paying homes to the city. The STRAMP was in our 24 budget, and that included a lot of discussions I think we've had with you over recent weeks and months. That allocation is not indicated here today because that's an ARPA allocation, but we're confident that that bid will go out shortly, and then we hope to get responses before the end of the year. Some smaller things. A large format printer and scanner was actually just installed yesterday, and that's really important to us and I think to the city because we have a lot of old paper plans and people often come in asking for their old building plans and things like that, and this will give us the ability to scan those in and make them electronic. One of the biggest things that we did this year was build out our electric vehicle fleet, so thank you all for that, and I think all of that has been through NOPEC money. So it actually hasn't really impacted our funding. 9 have been delivered already, 2 more you approved on Monday and are on their way. And then there's this last batch, which we're going to use via, we have another federal source for that. But the idea there is we've essentially replaced all of the ancient vehicles that we've had, some of which were literally falling apart. And with this last purchase, we would not only be able to have a fully electric fleet, but it would also accommodate what I'll talk about in a minute or two of our requested staffing for next year, additional staffing. But we think this is also really important given what we're hearing from Washington in the EV market and how that might be severely impacted in a negative way by the incoming administration. There's a lot of CDBG funded, partially funded activities that have come to fruition, and we've also gotten some new computers. So I'll pause for a second and just talk briefly about staffing. When we sat here last year, we were hopeful and we were wishing that we would be able to actually bring a building department in-house. But we were hearing a lot from people outside of the city saying that, you know, you're going to have a really hard time finding a chief building official. And if you can't have a chief building official, then does it really make sense to have an in-house department? Well, fortunately, we were able to bring on Mr. Eric Elmy, and I think he's been just a tremendous resource, the responsiveness, and just having somebody here every day who can run out and look at something when it's actually happening has been really important. But it's not only been him. We've been able to bring on into the city 2 permit techs, and actually we just brought on a 3rd permit tech who's going to help us with our architectural board of review. We have 1 building inspector that we've brought on and are interviewing for the 2nd. And so we're starting to actually be a real building department or building division here. And so the request for next year is 2 additional building inspectors. And we think once we do that, we can be a true full service building division that can be really responsive to people's needs in permitting, building inspections, and all of those good things. There are 2 other staffing requests that we have that are not really reflected here. One is a ARPA-funded rehab specialist to help with the Lead Safe program. So it wouldn't be here because it's an ARPA-funded program, and that would be time limited to the ARPA funds. And then there's also, I think, a $8,000 allocation for an intern. We had a great intern this past year, Kareem Azam, who was really great from now a recent graduate of Heights High. He was paid for via the mayor's intern allocation, but we wanted to make sure that we had somebody. We think it's a great way to engage younger folks in planning, and they really bring a great perspective. In terms of capital for 25, and I know Tara has mentioned and you've discussed in other sessions, there's a lot of things that we've proposed and only certain things that have made it in here. So it might be worthwhile going to the next slide that has all of this. So you'll see we have some more computers. Those are always necessary as we build out our departments. There's a bunch of accessibility related items here, which are really important to us because we know that ADA is something that we need to address in the community and something we spent a lot of time on. Brian Iorio, Assistant Director Iorio, has been sort of our liaison with the law department and with the Mayor's Action Center on being ADA coordinators. And so we want to put our money where our mouth is and actually invest in ADA improvements above and beyond what we have done this year. And so those are included in our list, but not necessarily included in the budget to date. There's various CDBG projects that are important because they're funded out of CDBG. So a lot of what we're trying to do is leverage other funding sources to make things happen. The Safe Streets for Cleveland Heights, where is that? I think it's on the previous slide, but the Safe Streets for Cleveland Heights implementation is actually really apropos because of the announcement just last Friday that we did receive the demonstration award from the federal government that requires a $200,000 or a 20% match, which in our case is $200,000. I know you were speaking a lot about traffic calming. So this is a traffic calming number we've put in here of $200,000, knowing that it was likely to be in Public Works as well. So as you consider that, just know that we've sort of built that in already. Placemaking and car-free day materials. We do a lot of things where we're out in the community trying to get people interested in the initiatives that we have, but we've been doing that sort of on a shoestring budget, so we wanted to have $10,000 to buy things to be able to advertise that we're out there, maybe give out materials that are related to the various planning initiatives that we have. I mentioned the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that supplement, gateway finding, plans, the fabrication. Land purchases is something that we typically put in here that allows us to purchase or dispose of city property, and that should be important this year as we move towards hopefully getting infill housing completed. And then there's two at the bottom that are not included in the current budget, but we strongly recommend, and those are both streetscape related projects and allocations built out of the conversations we've been having about Noble in particular and Taylor as well. And while ARPA is going to pay for the designs, we want to make sure that when we have a design that those streetscape improvements on public property can be done, number one, but number two is creating a sort of 50-50 private property program, because we know that a lot of the properties, particularly on Noble, some of those multifamily, need a refresh. And if there's a way we can incentivize people to improve those frontages, it's going to make a huge difference for the community. So again, those are two things that we think are really important that aren't currently indicated in your budget. And just last thing I wanted to run through are some of the initiatives that we typically put in our consulting general budget line. And some of these things we've done, some of these things we haven't. And then there's one big outstanding thing that I want to bring to your attention. So a lot of the accessory dwelling unit work that we've done has happened. We paid for a study with the county to study it. We're working with them now to look at zoning, and that's going to come forward later this year or probably in January, and then we'll start to have conversations with you in the community about that. And we're participating in an AARP design competition. We want to make sure that when we come out of this, if we come out of this with ADUs as a permissible use, that we have plans that are going to be pre-approved, number one, but number two, available to the public free of charge or at a really minimal cost. So we have some money set aside. We'd like to have money set aside to pay for architects to get those to design level. Again, it's a way to help the public do the things that we're trying to promote as initiatives. We're doing a market study for Severance. So, right, we've got a lot of big things going on at Severance, but we want to make sure, like when we learned this from Nobility Court, that we have data available that helps us make decisions. So even though MPACT is on board to do the master development of it, we wanted ourselves to control what that market study might look like, and that is in progress. It's just really started. We've done a lot of high-tech stuff, investing in developing a website, and that should come online in 2025. And then we've got other things that pop up during the year, including we have We've brought on landscape architects, 3 landscape architects to help us as we review plans as they come through. We know landscaping, trees are really important. So particularly when we have private development and think about the Park Synagogue site, think about Severance, and think about other smaller sites where that's an important thing. And then a housing needs assessment. So this is something that I had put in the budget for this past year, but we haven't been able to do yet. And what's that? Well, that really was born out of the Nobility Court experience, where we realized that people were walking into the room, challenging, I think, the idea that we needed to build, in this case, affordable housing, but housing in general. And so what a lot of communities have done, and we'd like to do, is do a third party look at our current housing conditions. And that includes existing rehabs that may be necessary and what that means in terms of future needs. And then therefore we can come to that next controversial project and say, well, we've done this study and it said, yeah, there is a market for this type of housing, or there isn't. And then, that will give us all the tools that we need to move forward. Last thing I just wanted to mention is what is not reflected in this budget at all is the conversation we've had with you about residential zoning, so tiny homes and other things. And that's because when we submitted this, it was still in the ARPA budget, and that I think we all agreed was going to be moved out to. So I think as you consider budgets here, just factor that in, whether it's 150, 200, 250,000. But in order for us to keep on doing this other stuff that we were doing, we would need to make sure that budget is there. So that's a recap of sort of where we've been and where we're at. We've got, the assistant directors here to answer any questions you might have about specific programs, properties, et cetera.
Yeah, we may do that. Thank you, Director. Director Schuster, you want to go over just the basic numbers that we need to look at?
For the 2025 budget request, thank you. They're requesting $11.2 million. As you can see, it shows that it is a decrease, but not all the capital is yet in the budget. Their biggest increase is their operating budget, and they're requesting $7.1 million. It's about $1 million increase from the 2024 request. I would like to say about the employees. So the intern is a built-in position, so it's so minor, it's already in there. But as the ARPA employee position, that would have to use ARPA revenue replacement dollars that we know is part of the funding that for siding, sidewalks, so that would have to be a council okayed position that we would use ARPA money that was already set aside for other. So that's why you don't see that there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question about the intern position. What do you see that, did you see that staying the same or transforming into something? Are you fine with it now, or?
Well, I'd love for it to be actually, it's been a summer internship and we've really tried to make it meaningful, but you can only do so much in 8 weeks. I would love for it to be a more permanent and longstanding, particularly if it's a high school student, it would be great for them to be coming year round.
Go ahead. Or did you finish? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions from council? I always flip to Gail first.
Thank you, Director Sam, for everything everybody's doing. I just got 3 questions. The first one, actually the fourth. Would like to know, excuse me, when the property was sold to TWG for the 2228 Noble Complex, was that money, is it set aside so we make sure that does get used for Noble?
So I'm not even sure that we have that money in our account yet. Did we actually take? Okay. In order to spend that $200-some thousand, we would have to, I've had this discussion with Director Zampt, we would have to make sure we know what we're spending it on. We don't yet.
Okay.
I've made a commitment, and on my behalf, I can't speak for council, but I made a commitment to direct that money toward improvements in the Noble Nela Business District generally. I've got some thoughts and ideas about it, but our plan is to use the Noble Road Corridor study and specifically the information that we're receiving from people and developing about that particular area of the Noble Road Corridor in order to make sure that we're using it in a way that the community feels is important and necessary. What we end up using it for is not necessarily going to be found in that information, but we want to make sure that we're taking that into account as we make those decisions. But we haven't sort of directed that money in any particular way, but we know that 200,000, what is it, 215, what precisely, doesn't really matter. But the goal is to expend it in that general location. We haven't discovered a way to expend the dollars yet. But yes, the commitment still exists. We didn't create a special fund for it officially or anything like that. So this is more, it's a less formal commitment, but a commitment nonetheless.
Right, I appreciate you doing that. How much have you projected to pay Safe Built for 2025?
Oh, goodness.
We do have that calculation somewhere. So let me, maybe, you don't have it. Is Alan here? Do you know that number, Alan?
Some later if you don't have it
Yeah.
today.
But just to give a little context on that, so we always knew that we were going to need support, staff or support for our building activities because there's just things that we can't hire. And so there was always going to be a small number. This year, given how we were trying to build out the department, so Safe Built's number was much larger, but we envision it to be significantly smaller. So we'll get you that exact number, but it's a magnitude much lower than this year.
And the last question, on the Noble Road private property streetscape, will that be income qualified and or would it also cover residential and commercial?
So to the latter, yeah, it certainly will cover everything because we know that each of those uses
Mixed, yeah.
makes a difference. I don't think we've figured out yet, would it be income qualified or not? My inkling is, I'm sort of looking back, is probably not because that first of all becomes a administrative nightmare, but also we know that a building sitting there has an impact on the community. So why should we exclude it because it doesn't income qualify?
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I know we've had conversations in the past, and this came up in terms of communications about how we introduce ourselves to new businesses coming into the city or anything. Is there anything that you think that council can do to help in terms of any packets or any information that you give them that we need to do our part to invest in with that? Because I know you guys are really, really engaging with new businesses and trying to attract them, but I didn't know if there's something on our end that maybe we need to invest in. I know we've spoken a lot about bringing new folks into our community to purchase homes and things that we give our new residents, but I don't know if there's anything that you thought we might need to do to help you guys enhance that presence in terms of new businesses coming in or to draw them in.
I think we've, now that we have full-time economic development specialist Julie Kaufman, it's been great because she's gotten to know existing businesses and prospective businesses. And you guys were speaking a little about this the other day. I think it was Councilman Petrus brought up the idea of, reiterating advertising sort of in other places. I think that's something that we would want to explore. That obviously would have a cost to it. And certainly your roles as council members, if you're talking to people and they have a business, I think just get them our way. That's probably the biggest impact that you can have.
And yes, I think, as you all are out in the community, when you have conversations with people who are thinking about starting a business, that those are people that you want to send to economic development as well. And importantly, we know that people want to sometimes move their business out of their home into a space. That's something that we can try to help out with too. And I just wanted to bring up, we might have mentioned this yesterday, but I did want to bring up the most recent issue of the Focus just came out. One of the things that we did with Focus was work with economic development in order to create sort of a holiday gift guide that we wanted to come out before people start shopping for the holidays. And that's the kind of assistance that we can provide to businesses as well, sort of extending reach and letting people in Cleveland Heights know about, the businesses that their neighbors have in our city. So the big small business focus here. And like I said yesterday, very high touch operation in economic development as well. But we're interested in having people funneled our way all the time in every way possible.
Director, let's go back to the market study for severance. My understanding is that Ryan Porter has to present something to NAMDAR in about 16 months or whatever's left, and NAMDAR's got to buy that. I'm assuming that they're going to do a market study, but, because whatever they put in there, they have to be able to show that this is going to make money or whatever. I don't know exactly what the numbers will be, but I know the guy's a businessman and he's looking to make a profit. So what I'm wondering is, why wouldn't Impact be doing the market study?
This was actually an active decision that we made together because the city felt that the residential market study component of this is something that we need anyway.
I see.
And the other elements of it, retail, light industrial, medical, Ryan and his team can use the residential market data to embellish. Because ultimately there might be an area where, for example, Ryan may want to build one type of housing, the market study may say something else, and the community may say a third thing. So we felt like it was, at least in this area, particularly when we know housing is a somewhat controversial topic, is the thing that we wanted to control the most. And it's not a very large sum that we're contributing, so we felt like it was a good study for us to conduct ourselves.
I'm glad you gave me a segue here to housing. So we just had a study done by Western Reserve, and they did a citywide assessment of all of our lots and buildings. The apartment buildings, so when you look at the buildings, I'm speaking in generalities, on the north side of town, you would never know, that this is an opinion, but it's based on many observations. You would never know what the inside looks like based on what you see on the outside. So many of them, and I am coming to a point here, but I want to just frame this properly. Many of the, it's brick building, there's no bricks falling out, no major, windows broken out, that kind of thing. But you go inside and it's frightening, I'll put it that way. So when we talk about, you talked about two new inspectors, both building inspectors. Would that include for apartment buildings, or is that just for commercial buildings?
Well, I want to invite Alan to come up here, but that's on the building side, so that's full service, right? That'll be residential, commercial. That might be an area where we still need a safe build sort of assistance. So I think it's a little bit different than what we're doing on the housing inspection side, which is why I was hopeful Assistant Director Butler can come up.
Yeah, if you would speak into the microphone, because that's the only way the public can hear.
Right, so for any existing building.
Full of
For any existing building, it's going to be on the housing, the property maintenance side and staff to take care of. So building inspectors that we're budgeting for are going to be for new construction. There is always some crossover between departments and sharing a workload. But for the most part, any existing building and any property maintenance inspections are going to be through the housing department.
So then that begs the question, given that we have 41% rental property in Cleveland Heights, and given the poor condition of some of our rental apartments, do we need somebody, in your opinion, that focuses specifically on apartment buildings? Or are you comfortable with kind of having the inspectors be kind of jack of all trades.
Right. I think
Generalists.
at this point, we're fully staffed, and I think we have the capability to inspect all the rental properties on their regular scheduled timeframes. Of course, we have to have the buy-in from the owner, right, and the responses from them, and then we'll take the appropriate actions after, right, if we don't get that response from them. But yeah, with a fully staffed department, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't be able to have those routine inspections scheduled with those owners.
And for occupancy permits, they're yearly for the apartment buildings,
That's correct.
and that does include an inside inspection.
So the regular routine of systematic inspection we do on a rental is every 3 years.
Right. But for the occupancy permit to be renewed, is there an inspection within those 3 years?
There should be, yes. That's the schedule we would do, right? And so when the permits are renewed, we'll check the schedule, and then we'll send the notice out to those property owners to say that, hey, you need a new inspection, or one hasn't happened within 3-year time frame.
So what I'm hearing from you then is that you're staffed up and you don't have any staffing needs for that particular area.
I mean, there's always a workload that we feel is, right,
I mean, that was a
what we
question.
can do, but yeah, we're
I meant
fully
that-
staffed, and I think, you know, unless we get more ordinances passed and more regulations, right, then at the current time frame, I think we can handle what we have.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
What does the inspection looks like for commercial buildings inside?
As far as a maintenance inspection? Right, so we'll typically do a commercial building every 3 years, similar to the rental inspection. I'm debating now on reviewing those to see if that time frame is right. It's always a chore to get inside of a commercial building due to the hours of operation. The fire department will do a fire inspection every year on the interior of them, or that's what their schedule is supposed to be. So they'll relay any fire inspection violations to us for enforcement. But it's typically, that's the time frame. Yep.
I don't have anything else. I'm looking left and right. Okay. Thank you all, and even those of you who didn't speak for attending. And I would expect that after we, have had time to digest this, again, we got this today, that we may have more questions in December at our December meetings. So I would encourage, council to look over these materials, and, if you have additional questions, we would want to do this publicly, because it's, in a sense, it's an extension of the public hearings when we meet, when we have our regular council meetings and eventually vote on a budget. So thank you, planning staff. Mayor, pardon my, I don't want to say ignorance, but it's something close to that. We don't have an HR director, or how does that department work? Because I know we haven't heard from them, and we haven't heard from anybody who they might be under.
So we don't have an HR department, and we've never had an HR department. Originally, under the former form of government, the HR function was led by a director of HR, at least in title, but that person was housed in the city manager's office. At this point, the way our organization is structured right now, Human Resources is a division of the Finance Department. So the Director of Finance has an Assistant Director of Human Resources. And so that's where the HR function for the City of Cleveland Heights is found.
Okay. So there's no budget per se for that. I mean, it's folded into, okay, got it. All right, I just wanted to make sure I understand. So at this point, let's just, is everybody cool for just a few more minutes just to kind of talk about what are we going to do with all this? I know we just got handed a lot of more information today, and we got a lot the last 2 days. I feel like our charge is to scrutinize the budget, ask questions, we're receiving information. It's certainly in keeping with council's budget authority that's in our charter. And I know that, because we got these, this information pretty much this week, I'd like to schedule time. So this is a question, but this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to schedule time in our committee of the whole meeting so we can just, knock all this around. So there's kind of like two things that ought to happen. One is we ought to talk about this amongst ourselves, maybe department by department. And then secondly, if we have more questions, the mayor's said that the directors will be available for us. And although we may write these down, and I'm not saying don't email questions. What I am saying is I think we ought to look at this as a continuation of the public hearings and ask them, even if we do send them to a director, make sure that we ask them out loud in our meetings. And I think our goal is I hope our goal is to vote on a budget in December. I don't want to say the date because that would be a little premature, but in December. That is our goal. Right? Well, okay.
Sure, that sounds good. How about a suggestion?
Yeah, I'm all ears.
So that we're not bombarding Director Schuster or any other department heads with individual emails. How about if we set a deadline when council members should send their questions to Addie, and then have Addie forward those questions as appropriate. And that way we're cutting down on the number of emails that anyone has to answer, and that Addie can eliminate the duplicative, and then Addie could just share with us the collective questions that have gone out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although I just don't want that to discourage anybody from any extemporaneous questions that you have, and obviously follow-ups that are, kind of likely to ensue. But Addie, that works, And I'm just saying if I have anything else.
What are we looking at for the due by date?
Well, December 2nd is the next meeting. Yeah, I mean, we're not working. Is Wednesday a holiday here, Mayor? I don't even know.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so Thursday and Friday are holidays. So I guess Wednesday, given that.
That's fine. I'm taking a half day, but I'll still answer your emails.
Yeah, yes, yeah. That's fine. Okay. I know, you got to cook. I understand. Go ahead.
I got a couple questions for future reporting that hopefully we'll have like a combined capital request into the budget so that we can see that as a total. And then we always talk at this time of the year about the balance that we should maintain in the unencumbered funds to maintain our credit rating. Is there a document someplace that council could be given as a guideline for what that balance should be as we start to look at if we need to use some unencumbered funds for these budget requests? There's something that we could have to use.
When you say should be, you mean to maintain the bond rating or what?
Our credit rating with
Credit
Moody's.
rating, yeah, okay.
Because we hear a percentage,
something.
but I'd like
Yeah.
a figure
Okay.
at all possible. I know you don't have the year-end balance in that account, but
It's usually between 20 to 25% of your budget,
yeah.
the one that you pass. And I don't know what you meant when you said to vote on this when you're ready. So for a budget, you have to pass it by the end of the year, or you do a temporary budget just so you know. I didn't know what that meant. Like, I'm going to vote on the, like, for council to vote on it. So there's 2 meetings in December. So it has to be passed by December 31st, just so everyone is aware of that deadline. Okay, I like to throw it out there.
And what about, do we have an audit from 2023?
No, it's not complete yet.
So what would, I mean, how would that happen? I mean, we don't do that's the state, right?
So right now, Zupka and Associates, I think,
Oh.
is doing the audit. I believe the state auditor is looking at it before it goes out. So we have to wait for the state auditor to do their job.
It's still in process. The financials for 2023 have not been completed yet. There's extensions out there.
Okay, I mean, that's, I don't know how much that would help us, but it would certainly frame in, what we've done so far. Well, I mean, we're not done with 2024, so we know we're not gonna, there will be an audit, but I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, I think it would be nice if we had an audit for 2023 to look at.
No, that's what I'm saying. She said it wasn't. I understand what she said, but I was just repeating, you're saying the audit is not completed for 2023.
Right, and the financials are not complete yet.
The financials are not completed.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes it a little difficult because that feedback is sometimes very informative. Anything else for the good of the order, as they say? All right, well, thank you all for hanging in with us. And I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 12:40.